Hey there. Appreciate you joining me today for Convertible Conversations. Going to talk about changing our mind, or this is not something you have to do, but I would like you to consider changing your mind about the Sabbath. Sabbath is not a term that many people even use anymore. Really, the only people who use it are what I would deem fundamentalist Christians, or people who tend to take the written word of God, the scriptures, literally, exactly literally. And people that don't understand that we're no longer under the law of the Old Covenant or the Old Testament. Under the Old Covenant, the Old Testament, one of the Ten Commandments was remember the Sabbath and keep it holy. Now, the Sabbath was Saturday to them, and the Sabbath was a day of rest. And they had all of these laws that they'd added to God's laws to try to make sure that nobody would break the Sabbath. Like well, the law said you can't walk, you can only walk so far into the Sabbath. And they made it even less than that, so to try to help people out, if you will. Well, when I grew up as a kid in the 1950s, most businesses were closed on Sunday, especially in Missouri, in the Ozarks where I lived. Hardly anything was open on a Sunday. Might be a restaurant and a gas station, but that was about it. And it was just everybody considered, whether you were religious or not, that you shouldn't work on Sunday because that was the Sabbath and you were to keep it holy. And of course, along with that was, well, it's the Sabbath, so you have to go to church morning and evening if you have evening services, and you have to tithe and you have to do all of these things. And it was just very important to people that they keep the Sabbath. Well, today there are still some religious groups, some Christian groups who say, well, we've got to keep the Sabbath holy. So they will say, well, it's okay for firemen and policemen to work, and we don't want to work at home and prepare meals, so it's okay for people to work in restaurants so that we can go there to eat and stuff like that. And of course, people who maintain the city waterworks or all these different kinds of things. Well, of course, they have to work, but most of us, we should not work on Sunday. And then they take that, unfortunately, and many times lay a guilt trip on other people who don't keep the Sabbath according to them. Well, whatever your thinking is on it, I'd like you to consider changing your mind about that because, as we've talked about yesterday, we're no longer under the law. The Old Testament was not written to us. It was written to the Jewish people at the time. It was written for us in the extent that we can learn from it. We can learn primarily from people's mistakes. We can learn how they mistakenly thought you could get right with God. We can learn how things don't go well if you don't really know God and stuff like that. But it certainly was not written to us. None of those laws were ever written to us. And in the Ten Commandments, remember the Sabbath and keep it holy, does not pertain to us at all today for one primary reason, in addition to the fact that we're not under the law. And that primary reason is, as we learn in the book of Hebrews, Jesus himself has become our Sabbath rest. Now, what that means is that Jesus himself fulfilled all the law, and he made us right with God permanently by what he did, not by anything that we did. So we are to rest in the fact that Jesus made us right with God, pure, holy, without fault, in with God forever. When we know that, we can rest. We no longer feel like, well, I have to go to church, or I have to pay my tithe, or I have to do this or do that. Now, those things are not bad things. They can be bad things, and they can certainly be bad things if you think you have to do them to please God. And I know sometimes people, even today, will think, oh, I missed church yesterday. I bet God's mad at me, and what am I going to do to make that up? Maybe I better send, $50 to the Salvation Army or something like that. We can laugh at that, but a lot of people still have that mindset. So, regarding the Sabbath, change your mind about that. The Sabbath has already been kept for you by Jesus. He is your Sabbath rest, and what it means today to keep the Sabbath holy and rest in the Sabbath is to rest in the fact that by Jesus' finished work, he's done it all. He's done everything for you. So, hopefully that will help you. If you have any questions about these things, contact me. Give me a personal message on Facebook or write me at convertibleconversations@gmail.com, and I'd love to visit with you about it. All right, here's till next time. See you then.